So just 1% of that. So you're 8 million. That's all I would love to directly impact. And that's not making a TikTok video or an Instagram reel that goes viral and it gets 8 million views. It's offering housing or writing a book that impacts in the people that read it.
This is the Money Seed Podcast, where we discuss all things investing, plain and simple, the way it should be. Please remember, this show is for educational and entertainment purposes only and is not intended to be investment advice. Welcome back to the Money Seed Podcast. I'm happy to host Mr. Zach Pittman. Zach is joining us from North Carolina, where Zach has been a real estate investor since his mid-20s. Zach holds a mortgage license. He is a mortgage loan officer. He has an investment group called GHP Capital. Zach has been active in all kinds of different business ventures related to real estate. Zach is an entrepreneur. He also has an amazing goal to help 8 million people, and we'll get into all of that on the show. Zach, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Gabe. I'm excited to be here. I can't wait to start diving into some of these topics. So first and foremost, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So Zach, start off with how you got involved in real estate.
Absolutely. It's always funny. People say they want to get into real estate and it seems scary. So the easiest way that people can do it, and the easiest way that I did it, was I just bought my own primary home, just somewhere to live. And it just took a mentor of mine to talk me into it, because he told me, he said, man, you're pissing away money in rent. You need to go buy a house. But here's what you do. You go buy your house and then you rent out your rooms to friends. Just get some buddies and they'll pay your mortgage for you. You'll save so much money. And I had student debt. And so I said, I've got my MBA to pay off and this accounting degree that I don't use. So let's go ahead and get some roommates in and cover my mortgage. So that's what I did. But he took it a step further. What my mentor did is he took this strategy, then he moved out of that house and bought another primary. Then what he did is he rented out the rooms in the second primary, turned the first one into an investment property, did it again. So then he had 3 properties, 1 he lived in, 2 he rented out, did it again. And he got up to 5 houses. And eventually he held on to them for 20, 30 years, sold them all. And he was a millionaire. It was that simple. There's no magic secret sauce to it. And the whole time he was just racking up rental income. So I listened to what he told me and I rented out the rooms in my first house, and it went so well. I decided to take that strategy and go sublease another property just to test it out. I'm like, if this room to room thing works for me, why can't I just arbitrage another property, rent the rooms out? And it worked. I made money on it. I did it for roughly 2 years. There were some headaches, plenty of crazy things that happened. And then I sold my first house, and that's what springboarded me into GHP Capital. And since then, I've pretty much been acquiring properties. Since then, I have properties in 3 different states, and I've just been, I fell in love with it just by renting out my rooms. I really enjoyed it.
I love it. Yeah, that's a great way to start. A lot of people start. It's referred to as house hacking, right?
There you go.
Exactly. Whether you're renting out rooms, or some people rent out their basement apartment, right, or the second unit when they buy a duplex, etc. I think it's a fantastic way to get started. If you don't mind me asking, Zach, how old were you when you got into this first property?
I bought my first home for my 25th birthday,
awesome.
To the day. And the funny thing was, it was a USDA home. So a lot of people forget a USDA home is where you can buy a property for 0% down. And it's usually out in the country. It's rural. So it's the United States Department of Agriculture. It was meant for farmers and people who could not get a bank loan. So the government stepped in and said, hey, if there's these low income areas or densely populated places, then we're going to write loans for them. Well, the thing was, the USDA home I got was only 4 minutes from the city limits. So it was strategically placed to where I knew I could get renters in the rooms. And I actually got paid money to buy the property, because at the time you could take a little bit of a higher interest rate and get some money back. So I was paid a couple $1,000s to buy a house that the government backed and secured, that tenants paid for my mortgage, and then I sold for a profit. It's absolutely absurd that you're able to do that.
That's absolutely incredible. And thank you for bringing that up. because a lot of young people need to know that they don't have to be rich to get into a property. They don't need to have 20, 30, $40,000 down necessarily, because you can buy USDA homes, you can buy FHA homes, et cetera, right? You can get FHA loans. And there's
Yes.
both are really good ways to get into a property on the cheap. So I think that's fantastic that you were able to discover that. That's really cool.
Yeah, I went to school in Louisville, Kentucky, this small university, Bellarmine University. That's where I got my degrees. And I had only moved back for 1 year. I rented for 1 year, lived with my parents for May, June, July, and I bought in August. So I was only back for a short period of time before I bought the home. And at the time back then in 2013, I was only making a little over $40,000. So I wasn't making a ton of money. I didn't have a ton of savings. I had to live with my parents so I could pay my car off, so I could get my debt to income ratio low enough. So people just need to talk to someone like myself, who's a loan officer, or someone that knows how to, pick the right strategies in real estate, and you can find a way to make it work.
So thank you for taking us toward the mortgage loan officer discussion. I was going to ask you, just for our listeners, who is a mortgage loan officer and what do they do?
So when you want to start looking at buying a home, many people think that you go and talk to a realtor first, which is fine. And it's okay. Realtors are the ones that show you the houses. They find the homes for you and send you the homes that you're interested in. The thing is, roughly 80% of people need a loan to buy a home. And to get that loan, you have to go through what we call a lender. Now, lenders are typically your banks or companies that lend out mortgage loans. The people that work for those companies are called loan officers. In some cases, you have mortgage brokers, who are people who can get different loans from different companies. So they also exist as well. But myself, I'm a loan officer for Rapid Mortgage Company. So all we do is write loans. We're not a bank. We don't have savings accounts and CDs and stocks. All we do is mortgages. So I'm a loan officer, and what we do is we partner with realtors. So when you go to a realtor to look for a home, they're going to tell you, hey, how much house can you afford? Most people don't know. They have not secured the right to get a loan. And this is called getting pre-approved. That's when you would come to me and to a loan officer, and I will look through all your financial information. I will look at what you've made over the past 30 days, what you've made over the last 2 years. Sometimes we look at your taxes, depending if you're a self-employed person or if you're 1099, meaning you're a contractor. So we look through all of your finances, including your credit score. Based on all that information, I can say, hey, look, we either need to work on your credit a little bit, or credit's good, your income's good, you've got the savings for closing costs. Here's how much house you can afford. From that point, you are pre-approved, and the realtor can then show you homes that fall underneath that pre-approved amount.
And Zach, usually when people do their banking, right, some people go to a bank. I do mine at a credit union. Quite often, those banks and those credit unions will call their customers and offer them advertising saying, hey, if you're looking to buy a home, call us, we'll give you this kind of mortgage. Here's our best rate. What is it that, for example, you can provide, or what are some of your services that are different from what people would find at a bank or a credit union?
At Rapid, we really, really crush it when it comes to customer service. And I know that may sound cliche, but it is extremely important when it comes to getting a home. We don't have the lowest rates. We also don't have the highest rates. And just as a tidbit here, it drives me crazy when loan officers and companies compete on interest rate. And they say, well, what rate can I get? Look, you can get as low of a rate as you want. The question should be, how much does it cost me to get this particular rate? Every rate's going to cost you something. So the question should be, well, how much does it cost me for this particular rate? Because you can get any rate that you want. I really want people to start understanding that. So if someone is selling you on rates, you need to really dig into the details and figure out why they're doing that. So for me, I'm all about the transparency, providing great customer service. I really try to be just straightforward and honest with people. If it's not their time to buy, I will tell them that. Look, your credit score is not great. You shouldn't buy right now. Or you don't have the savings. You're going to be home poor. Like, just wait. Or here's how you should do it. Yeah, go buy it. But I really recommend renting a room out. So I'm a straight shooter. And when it comes to customer service, I give out my personal cell phone. People can text me. I was talking to someone 15 minutes ago. It's 9 o'clock at night here. And so it doesn't matter. I can always be reached. Weekends, on vacation. That's what separates us from a bank. If you're trying to close a house and something happens and you have a closing and you're calling a bank on a Sunday at 10 a.m., good luck. So that's exactly what separates us.
And Zach, when you mentioned a few minutes ago that you can get any rate you want, were you referring to buying points? How people can just buy points?
Yes, right. Exactly. Buying points, and sometimes points cost different things at different places.
And Zach, when people talk about, when you mentioned, being like not having the right credit score, or being, house rich versus, having a lot of extra money for life, right? Or being, I'll forget, what was the expression that you used? House rich or home poor?
Home poor, house poor.
That's what it was. Do you have any yardsticks or any ratios that you tell people, like, hey, if this is your income, you shouldn't buy a house that's more than this or less than this? What are some of the generic rule of thumbs that you use?
I like to stick to the absolute max, being that all of your debt, including your home mortgage, should not be more than half of what you make. That should be the most absolute cutoff. We actually use thresholds when we pre-approve someone. That's the thresholds we use. And the good conservative number would be 36%. What that means is you're going to add up all your debt. Think of things that you have an IOU on. So these would be your credit cards, your student debt, your car loans, not your utilities, not your cell phone bill. Those things are separate. Things you have a quote unquote IOU, something you owe money on. So when you add those up, and then you also add your mortgage payment into that, it should be 36% of what you take home before taxes. The next number above that, where you're still okay, would be 43%. Once you're above 43% of all of your debt payments, being over that 43% of what you bring home per month, you need to start looking at paying off some of that debt, because it's getting too high. If you're over 50%, you're just too high, in my opinion. I think some people can survive between 43 and 50. You're still okay. It's still high, but you can survive. But if it's more than half, you need to make some changes.
Yeah, well said. And Zach, if there are investors, right? Like, let's say somebody like an out-of-state investor calls you. Are most of your clients investors or retail individuals just looking to get into their home?
That's a good question. I don't think I've really looked at percentage-wise who's who, but I would say 75% are home buyers, and actually first-time home buyers, believe it or not.
Interesting. Wow. Okay.
Another 10% is probably second-time home buyers. The rest are all investors. I will say this. I talk more to people who are interested in investing than I do anyone else. But the ones that I do loans with are people that are usually first-time home buyers.
And Zach, people who are first-time home buyers, what are some of the mistakes people typically make? What advice would you give them, saying, hey, you know what, this is a common pitfall. Don't go there.
A common pitfall of buying a home. Thinking that it's the forever home. The common pitfall I see is people stretching themselves too far. They try to go after the max. So if you're pre-approved for $500,000, people go after the max and sometimes over it. I'm like, hey, you're pre-approved for $500,000. We found this lovely house that's $525,000. I'm like, come on, guys. Look, we talked about this. So trying not to stretch yourself, I really try to push the notion on people. I have this discussion with every single person I talk to. I'll bring it up one time. If people latch onto it, great. If they don't, I let it go. But when someone comes to me and we talk about being a first-time home buyer, I try to understand what they want, their job history, all the standard stuff I need to ask for mortgage business type of things, right? Just to make sure that everything's kosher. But I always mention, are you interested in investing in the future? And about 75% or more are always like, I would love to be able to do that in the future. I think that's in the plan. So we're going to figure that out at some point. Or yes, right after this one, I'm going to go buy something else. The reason I bring this up is because if your goal is to get into real estate investing, do not go stretch out to your max. The goal is that you should be buying something is going to cash flow, something you can add value to, meaning you can paint, replace the floors. It needs to be, it needs some work to it. Don't go buy a brand new home or something that was just updated where the value has already been taken out of the home. You need to buy something that you can add value to that will cash flow in the future in an area that is up and coming. Use your primary home purchase strategically so that in the future you can turn that property into a rental home or sell it for a lot of money. So then you can go buy what you want and hopefully have cash left over for something else. Because what people forget, when you buy a home, after 2 years, when you sell that home, the profit that you make up to a certain point is tax free. So if you make $100,000 after 2 years of selling that home, you pay no taxes on that. In a country where the government taxes everything and not taxing the money you make from selling your home, use that to your advantage as long as you can until that changes. So I always stress this immediately when I talk to someone first convo. Are you interested in investing? If so, here's what I recommend. Because as you go get your next home, underwriters want to make sure you're upgrading that house. So if you go big on the first one, it's hard to backtrack and use that strategy again. You really got to start right on that first kicker. So that's the mistake people make. They go get a family home that's got the 2-car garage that's the top of their mark and stretch themselves. Don't do that. Convince your partner that, hey, we need to build wealth or cash flow. Let's get into something that we don't love, stay there for 2 years, fix it up, and then we'll move. So that's the best advice I have.
And I think that's great advice, because if people get into something that is sort of within their means, right, then they actually have that extra cash left over to do the repairs, to add value to the home, to invest in something else. Whereas, like you said, if people go right up to their limit, then they're going to have very little excess cash, right? They're going to be struggling to pay the bills. Yeah, and getting back to that comment about how it's not your forever home. I'm in my mid 40s now, and I've never lived at the same address for more than 4 years in my entire life. Like from the time I was born, my parents always moved, I always moved, and every time I think, okay, that's it. I'm settling down. This is going to be the place. Life throws a curveball at you, right? People change jobs. Companies close. Economy goes through cycles. There's a great opportunity somewhere else you got to chase, and so yeah, I move all the time. So, and I'm not done moving yet. So the place I'm currently at, I'm renting. So I'll bet you I'm going to move in the next few years as well. And that's just life. I think if people approach it that way, it gives them a lot more flexibility and a lot more freedom.
I agree. Yep. I think the average is around 5 years that people move.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. Yeah. Especially in this uncertain economy, right? You have to give yourself that flexibility. And I also, and people can get trapped in those homes, right? Like, for example, I grew up in a blue collar factory town, and we got really hard hit in 2008. And what a lot of people did was, in their 20s, they maxed out. They got the big 2,000 square foot home, with both parents working. And all of a sudden, one of the parents loses one of the people loses their job. Now they're down to one income, but now they don't have the option to sell and move, because now if they're selling their home, house prices went down. Now they can't even get their money out. And so now they're kind of stuck. Like, what, we could move to another city. I could get another job, but then we lose like 30, 40,000 on the home. Right now we can't get our money out. Now we can't make a down payment on the next home we get into. And so all of a sudden people can get trapped in a place that's less than ideal. So I think that's great advice to anyone in their 20s. Don't max everything out on your first home. Exactly.
Yep.
Zach, getting back to investing a little bit, when investors reach out to you, the North Carolina market very well. Tell me a little bit more about the market where you're at. I believe you're not in Charlotte. You're a little bit north of Charlotte. Maybe tell me a little bit more about that area. Do properties cash flow? Is there a strong demand for single families? What's the vacancy rate like? What's the unemployment like? And is this a region that you recommend for out-of-state investors?
Yes, this is a fully loaded question. So Charlotte is currently ranked as the #1 market for 2023 in the whole country. So everyone and their mother, brother, and sister is coming here to try and find property to make a buck on. What happens, though, is I'm a part of a bunch of Charlotte real estate groups here. It's very difficult to find deals if you're an investor. The way to find a really good deal is to find what's called an off-market property. This is something that you hear through word of mouth or you're on a specific list, or you know certain people, or you're in certain groups. That's who has the off-market properties. These are your discounted properties where you can pick them up as an investor very cheaply, fix them up, and typically flip them for more money. Or you can use what's called a burst strategy, which is when you buy something, you renovate it, you then rent it out, you do a refinance and get the money back out of it. People use that strategy as well. The key is you make your money when you buy it. So if you can find an off-market property and it's at a discounted price, you're going to make money. There's just hardly any of those right now. They are far and few between. On-market properties are those that you see on Zillow and on Trillia, things like that, where they're listed on the MLS. They're on the market. They're being marketed. Those typically are not deals. They are very hard to find. So in Charlotte, good luck finding something on the market. You have to know people and be in the right places to get a deal. And that's Charlotte. Charlotte's growing. Most people are coming from the north, specifically New York, Newark, and New Jersey are the top 3 places people are moving into Charlotte from. It's booming. There's apartment buildings going up absolutely everywhere. All of the rent is going up. The national average for appreciation is 4% overall for 2023. Granted, some areas were overinflated and will go down in 2023. Charlotte is one of those areas that will still potentially experience double-digit appreciation in 2023. There's just so many people coming here. There's jobs, companies coming in. It is absolutely booming. The same can be said for Raleigh, another top 10, maybe arguably top 5 market in the country. People have figured out North Carolina has great weather, great location geographically, mountains, beach, and it's still priced at a point that was undervalued. So it just is now at a point where North Carolina properties are starting to tick up because more people are coming in. They figured out, hey, I can get a lot of bang for my buck if I move to the Carolinas. It's cheap property. People in New York are like, I can pay $900,000 or $1 million and get a McMansion down here compared to what they would get in New York. It's a game changer. Same if you're coming from California and you come here. And then with remote work, people are just coming here and grabbing up properties. You got everything you need here in terms of amenities too. So it's absolutely booming. South Carolina has extremely low taxes. So even South Carolina is doing great. They have an incentive for veterans who want to come to South Carolina. They are basically giving people money to move to South Carolina. If you're a veteran, you've got beautiful beaches there too. Myrtle Beach area is absolutely booming for snowbirds and people who want warmer weather from the north. Man, it's just crazy here in North and South Carolina right now. Just 2 of the hottest markets you can think of.
That's amazing. Yeah. And Zach, where can investors find some of those off-market properties? Let's say if I'm out of state, is it like, can you help me find some deals and maybe help with wholesaling, or like, is there any other way that I can find, was it bank-owned properties or anything else that is accessible to somebody who is not local and can't drive for dollars or do something similar?
I'm so glad you mentioned drive for dollars. So yes. All right. Wholesaling. For those who don't know, wholesaling is where you find a property and convince a homeowner to sell you the property. So you sign a contract with the homeowner and you say, hey, I'm going to buy your property, or the key here, or I would like to assign this property to someone else if I cannot buy it. The assignment piece is where you give that contract to someone else for a fee. You do not need a license to do this, but it's called wholesaling. And the trick here is you need to be able to have these skills to find homeowners who want to sell you their property. And you can create your own off-market deals by doing that. There are strategies. I teach it. I have a website called thehomebuyerleague.com. We'll dig some more into that, but you can learn how to wholesale all over the internet. There are strategies on how you can find these properties. So that is one way. A tactic is called driving for dollars, where you literally drive around and find these properties that you call the homeowners on. So that's driving for dollars. There's other ways you can pull lists of properties that are most likely to have an absentee owner, or to be vacant, or that someone just passed or got a divorce. You can pull lists on those properties, and then you just call them one after the other until you find someone willing to sell. So there's a couple of different strategies for doing wholesaling. You can make a good chunk of change wholesaling. However, 95% of wholesalers don't quite do well or even make any money. You have to really stick to it and follow up. So there's a lot that goes into it. It sounds easier than it is. It can be done. I've done it. It does do very well because you don't need any money to really do it. So that is one strategy. Joining the real estate groups, so investment groups. The only thing with that is as soon as a deal goes up, especially in Charlotte, that deal's got 20 comments within the first 30 minutes. Everyone jumps on it. It's very competitive right now. If you've got cash, then go for it. That's one place to be, is in the groups. Some people may miss it. You might grab one. There are wholesaler groups where wholesalers list properties. That's another good one. It's wholesaler groups. There's meetups as well. I go to a couple investment meetups, and when you go, people have the opportunity to show deals at the very beginning or end of the meetings. Someone will say, "Hey, I've got this multifamily property, this amount, this location. Here's the sheet of everything you need to know." So that's another place to get off-market deals as well. Finding realtors who work with investors exclusively. So they sometimes have wholesalers in their pocket who will send them deals. There's also something called pocket deals. This is where there's a team of realtors and one of their sellers comes to them and says, "Hey, I want to sell my house." They will sell the house internally amongst the realtor group. And so they don't put it on the market. So only the clients of those realtors get that deal first. So that's another good way, is to get in with realtors that specifically work with investors. And those are really just those are probably the top ways to find off-market deals. You have auctions. Those are optional. It used to be a really good thing. They're more competitive now, but that's not to say you can't still find a good deal. And then you mentioned foreclosures. Those are slowly coming back. Also very competitive. We also call them REOs. They're bank-owned properties. So those are optional. I don't know too much about. I've never done an auction myself personally, so I can't really speak to it. So yeah, those are the best ways.
Yeah, I mean, with the auctions, so we've been to a few auctions in Wausau. That's one of the places where me and my business partners do some investing in single families. And auctions are hit and miss. It's funny you mentioned them being very competitive. There was one property that we were actually like bidding on, but it was crazy. There was like 8 different people bidding, and like we prepared obviously before we went to the auction. We got a deed search, a title search, and lien search, all this stuff done. And then we had our max bid sort of prepped before we went to the auction, and there were like eight or 9 different bidders who all got it, and they bid up the price something like almost twice. It sold for almost twice what our max bid was going to be.
Whoa!
Yeah, it was crazy. And this other time, the second time we went to an auction in Wausau, what happened was same thing. Like we do all the background search, and every time you do a lien search, you got to pay like a law firm a couple $100 to do it, blah blah blah. And we do all our forecasts and our financial models, and we went and it got pulled the day of. Like it didn't even go to auction. So like the night before, it was like, yeah, this property going up for auction at 9 a.m. At the steps of the county courthouse. We show up at 9 a.m. and it's like that property did not, like something happened between that day and the day before, and maybe somebody bought it or somebody settled with the bank or something, but it never went up for auction. So you got to be patient. It's hit or miss.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. You did all that prep work. I'll have some hearsay for you. I was at a baby shower of all random places and ran into a guy there. He's in software. He's a software engineer. So obviously he built an algorithm that could pull all the auction properties and find the best ones. And he did it around 2012, 2013, when properties started coming back from the crash. And he's got 18 properties now, and I believe they're almost all paid off. And so he said, we were going in just racking up these auction properties for years, him and his wife's a real estate agent. And they just cleaned house. But the thing he told me is, he said, yeah, I got out of it a couple of years ago. It just got to a point where there were no really good deals anymore. It started to get really competitive. People figured it out, and it was just really hard and not worth my time to really hunt down a good auction deal. So he's like, I got out of it. That's all I needed to hear to really be like, okay, I'm not going to explore this right now. But that's not to say in the future, depending on the area, that won't come back and be a thing based on where you are.
And Zach, a few minutes ago, you mentioned joining a local real estate group, et cetera. How can people find out about local real estate groups? What's the best way to reach out to them and to find out when they meet, how you can join, et cetera?
There are some you have to pay for. So you can just look up, put in your city and real estate group, and there's some professional ones you can join that have fees. I like the free ones that are usually put on by realtors or put on by wholesalers or put on by mortgage lenders because they're trying to network, they're trying to do deals, and they want people in the group who are also trying to do deals, who are bringing something to the table. So I like those the best. You can go to meetup.com and search for real estate groups or investor groups in the area. But the easiest is to go to Facebook, type in your town or the town you want, an investor group. And I'm in a couple, depending on the state: Georgia, North Carolina, Columbia, South Carolina. And when deals or people post things, you can see what's going on in the area. You hear things, you see the same people. And if you put yourself out there enough, people will, notice your face and you want to hear your feedback. So they're a great place to drum up business, meet people. So Facebook's, I would say, the number one place for doing that.
So let's talk a little bit more about the Home Buyer League. Tell me, what is that all about? And I believe you're the commissioner, correct?
That's correct. So I am the commissioner, and the Home Buyer League is a new concept that I've yet to find anything like it in existence. What happened was that I made this full-time jump into real estate. It got to a point where I was ready to make the jump. I got my lender's license and I still had my investments, but I wanted to help people get mortgages and teach them. Really, I wanted to help people get started with investing, get their first time home. And what I learned very quickly was, once I put myself out there as the real estate guy in my area and I'm pretty active on social, so putting out information. As I did that, I was just getting blown up all the time with questions. I was on the phone, every day on the phone, probably 30 minutes talking about some investment that someone wants to do. And it just got to a point where I was repeating myself too much. People wanted to know about wholesaling and learn about it. How do I flip? How do I rehab? I want to get started investing. How do I do it? And it just became so cumbersome. I said to myself, this has got to be in one place where someone asks me this, I can just point them to one place to save my time so that they can go get the information. Just watch this video. You watch this short little course and you've got it. It's coming from me. It's just in one place. It's digital. And so I went down this pathway of starting to build this website and put my information into course form. And what happened is it just took a life of its own, because I realized a problem. When I myself have tried to learn new areas, like I almost bought property in Jacksonville, Florida. I probably still need to. Also, super hot market for the next 5 years. Another hot tip for people. There was no easy way to get that information. I spent hours, days calling people, calling realtors, property managers, learning the area, reading forums, reading news articles, you name it. I was doing it, trying to learn this area. I bought in Georgia, same thing. But imagine doing that for 5, 10, 15 different areas. As you mentioned, you're in San Francisco. It's crazy expensive there. So you need to know, where can I go that has a deal, and learn about it quickly for my strategy. It's going to take you hours to figure that out.
Correct.
Well, the Home Buyer League is designed to take that away. So for example, if you want to know, how do I Airbnb in downtown Charlotte? Here's your expert. Here's the strategy and the location. Watch the short videos in the course format, and you'll know exactly what you need to do with documentation, and you're done. I just released one, for example, for people getting this question all the time. How do I buy in Mexico? One of the top realtors, Playa Realtors in Playa del Carmen, Karina Said. She's amazing. She's been featured on all types of stuff. Her course is now out. So if someone's like, how do I do it? She lays it out. Here's how you do it. You reach out. We get you with somebody who's in mortgage. What about insurance? Insurance is cheap. Taxes are cheap. You fideicomiso. This is what that means. This is how you get a home. Here are the properties. Super straightforward. You don't have to dig for hours to get info. And it's just in the beginning phases right now. So the idea is to have, we call them officiants. The teachers are officiants because they're like an official, right? They're going to show you the way to play the game in the area. So we will have more in the future where they can stack onto the teachings to go deeper into what you need to know in the area. And so it's brand new. We've got the Outer Banks agent on. She's a top agent in Outer Banks. She does a fantastic job of diving in to that. Also, I had no idea you could make so much money in short-term rentals there. So just just the information you can get and the specificity is amazing. I'm really enjoying the people that I'm meeting. And it's just a simple, cheap, easy way for people to learn about the areas, for realtors to get some exposure and to really be seen as an expert. They're curated. So we're not just putting people on there that don't know what they're talking about. You know, they're an expert, and it's just one specific area for a specific topic. So that's what the Homebuyer League is.
I love it. How can people join?
It's free to join. You go to www.thehomebuyerleague.com. And once you join, you then get access to all of the courses. We release them regularly whenever people sign up. And when I say sign up, whenever officiants sign up and we shoot their course, we then release it. So we're constantly now pumping out more courses for people to learn. We're starting in the Carolinas first and a few select international locations. Once we have tapped the strategies in all of those locations and we feel like we have a strong hold on those markets, we'll then add new ones.
I love it. I'll put that link in the show notes. You're saying it's free to join. How much does the typical course cost?
Oh man, if you wanted a wholesaling course, for example, you're paying about $497. I actually pumped out one that people can take. There's one that is for free. It's very high level, but then I go deeper into my recession-proof real estate strategies for max profits. It's a $27 course, but I go deep into how to wholesale for recession proofing yourself. You could watch that in wholesale, and that's $27. So there are some that will eventually come out that are paid, but they're so cheap that you more than get your value back.
Excellent. And Zach, I love stories about people being entrepreneurs and trying new stuff. Tell us a little bit about how you came up with the concept. Obviously, there's definitely some sports analogies, and maybe focus a little bit on how you were able to get the website together. What kind of a platform do you use for the videos and the courses? Like, do you use a third-party platform like Udemy or something, or did you completely develop it in-house? And how did you go about it?
Sure, I'll go back a little bit for this one. It took me a while to figure out wanting to be an entrepreneur, other than selling candy and shoveling snow when I was younger, not by choice, but because my parents told me if I wanted something, I needed to work for it. So,
there's snow in North Carolina?
Yeah. Well, you get like a month of cold weather and maybe a couple of times of snow, but no one's prepared. So you can rack up if you're a kid. So yeah,
Nice.
I was out there doing that, cutting I had to work for my money. I didn't come from a wealthy family. We were low middle income, probably. I had my needs, but I never really had my wants. If to get the things I wanted, like a game system, I had to work for it. And so that instilled in me a hard work ethic. And so when I got to my master's program, everyone told me, you're going to be an entrepreneur. If anyone's going to do it, it's you. And it was just how my mind worked with new ideas and wanting to go for things. And so I took that and ran with it. I started working with a startup out of Boulder, Colorado for consulting. I did that for a while. I actually became the director of research and development for a little while, just because of my ideas. From there, I started my own marketing agency, which was doing very well. I worked with companies over 5 different continents, everything from blockchain to accounting firms, e-commerce, and it was doing very well, but a bad relationship kind of crushed that company. I wish I would have stuck with it. Things would be a little bit different, but can't go back now. But I learned a lot of marketing skills. That's where the website skills came in. And then from there, I took those skills and tried to grow an investment firm. So I actually got licensed with my Series 65 as a registered investment advisor, started an investment firm. And what my goal was to change how financing worked. I wanted to go in and actually help people who needed it. I hit a lot of red tape. I did not do my due diligence. The state did not help me at all. So I shut that down immediately once I figured that out. And then that's when real estate hit. And so through those entrepreneurial journeys, I picked up a ton of skills, specifically in marketing and sales and other types of things. So now I feel like all of those trials and tribulations have now put me at this place of the Homebuyer League. So when it came to website building, I'm using Thinkific right now, which hosts the courses. I've done a course before, but it's seamless with Thinkific. It is kind of pricey. I will eventually change it over to WordPress, which I have a lot of knowledge. I've built over a dozen some websites. So I'll switch to WordPress and probably use an API or a different course builder on top of the WordPress because then I can do anything that I want. So I already have the WordPress knowledge from the marketing days. Social media and being able to market, that came from the marketing agency, picking up those skills. I also had a market research background, used to work with a market research company. So all of that and all the skills have just added together now. Being a lender also for sales, just cold calling. So I have to call officiants. Had 3 new ones who want to do it today. Asheville's up next. So we've got some short-term rental knowledge for Asheville coming up. It's the top retirement town in the country, is Asheville. So absentee vacation owners is coming. But yeah, cold calling. How do you sell? How do you talk to people? All of those skills I feel like have brought me to this place of being an entrepreneur and finding gaps, or as you mentioned, when we spoke just briefly before this podcast about blue ocean strategy, where you find a gap that, is a market that's not being tapped. And so I feel like that's what this is. Those are the things you have to look for in business. You can take that into real estate. What are people not doing? The hot thing right now is micro apartments. Those are about to be a game changer. So these micro apartments are popping up in Raleigh right now specifically. That's what my 30-minute conversation was today with someone who wants to do them in another place in North Carolina. I won't say, but they're like 300 to 360 square feet. That's
Amazing.
it.
Wow. So it's like a tiny bachelor pad, essentially.
Yes.
And the building codes allow for it.
So we can get into that briefly. It depends on where you're at and what the rules are. So I had to learn about this when I did the subleasing. So Charlotte actually does theirs based on square footage. It's based on how many people you can have in a certain area of square footage. In, say, Winston-Salem, where I had my sublease, they broke it down that you can't have X amount of people more in a home. So you can't have more than 3 unrelated people. That's South Carolina rules too. So no more than 3 unrelated people in a household. So that's your cap. So it depends on the area. You really have got to know your zoning, and you really have to know the rules based on where you're at. The zoning rules being in a city and being rural are going to be different. So you have to know those rules. So with micro apartments, the cash flow is insane because the amount of money you make per square foot is just off the charts. And it's a need right now, depending where you're at, because rent's so dang expensive. So I like it. As soon as I heard about it, I started looking for rundown, like medical office buildings or warehouses that I could convert that were just super cheap that were sitting. Obviously, in this market, I didn't find a thing, not a single thing. So maybe somewhere else that I haven't looked, they exist. But yeah, it's a hot thing right now.
That's wild. Yeah, it's the first time I've ever heard anyone mention micro apartments. That's wild. But no, I think your story is super inspirational because it shows that you don't necessarily have to have a software engineering degree to start like a website or to start your own online course, online business, right? I love the fact that, I mean, you completely embody the ideal sort of bootstrapping startup entrepreneur, right? Where it's like, you know what, I can just teach myself, or you know what, I can figure out WordPress, and you bring together a whole bunch of different disciplines from marketing to sales to your WordPress experience, and you put it all together, and here you go, you got a website up and running, and it's growing fast. I mean, congratulations. I think that's an awesome story.
Thank you. No, I really appreciate that. And they say a lot of entrepreneurs fail like 3 times before they hit it. And you don't hear those. You only hear the successes, and we're like, oh, they're an overnight success. But as soon as you go read their story, it's like they started this and it became something else, and then they failed at that, and then they finally got there. So, I appreciate the kind words, and it has been a journey. And I'm 35 now. I always lose track. I'm 35 now, so I'm just blessed that I've kind of figured it out where I am now in life, and I'm excited to see where things can go in the future.
Absolutely. A couple of years back, I used to listen to the podcast, it's called the Founder podcast without the E. So it's FOUNDR. And I believe that the host's name is Nathan Chan, I believe. And all he does in the podcast is just interview people such as yourself who have a successful startup idea. And he always talks about their journey. And he has this he's interviewed hundreds and hundreds of successful, entrepreneurs. And he has this saying that anything meaningful takes 7 years to build.
Ooh.
And it's amazing how often that
Yeah.
comes up. I mean, it's a generality, right? It's a generalization, but you know, if you look at the 7 years from like all the experience you've had in sales and marketing and WordPress, and then you're experiencing real estate, and now you're building it. Yeah, like it's hard to do. It's hard to build anything meaningful in a short amount of time. You have to invest a lot of time and a lot of elbow grease into it, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good metric. 7 years is pretty solid. And I think that's the key is you have to strap in, be ready to go the long haul with this. And I think that's a good mentality because when I look at this thing right now, it's not that, no, well, what are you doing with the home buyer league right now? Or what are you doing in mortgages right now? It's like, what are you doing to build a solid foundation so that as you use the compounding effect, where will this sucker be in 7 years if you keep at it? I think that's almost the secret behind social media and the influencers. If you're consistent for that long over 7 years, there's a reason people become influencers and big time YouTubers and big business owners. So it's
That's
just,
it.
it's a game of longevity and consistency.
Absolutely. And there's a saying here in Silicon Valley that people tend to overestimate what you can accomplish in 1 year, but underestimate what you can accomplish in 10 years. And the underlying reason, I think, is because just like how money compounds, you know, in an investment and starts growing faster all the time, your efforts also compound over time, right? So you keep putting effort in 1 year, 2 years, you build out this, you build out that, you got this other idea. Eventually, like it'll start to compound on itself and it'll start to grow faster and faster. And then you can look back on it 7 years from now and you're like, whoa, man, this thing like became much bigger than I anticipated, you know, and it really started to take off after year 3 or year 4, whatever it was, right? But it does take time. And just like any investment, it takes time for the compounding to work its magic.
And I think I'm glad you said that because that's the secret sauce is building upon yourself. Just like finance, you're compounding yourself and your skills and your connections. And I think that to add on to what you just said, you don't know where it's going to take you. You don't know who you're going to meet, who you're going to talk to, and you have to put yourself into those situations. So something I have failed to mention about the Homebuyer League, I think it's important. I don't know why I don't mention it. I think I'm trying to play it close to the chest because I don't want people to know yet until I have figured it out. The reason there are international people on the Homebuyer League is because it's a dream of mine to eventually have international real estate. I have a dream of being able to like travel to Mexico and stay at my condos and meet amazing people and just go out to eat with friends in Mexico and then fly over to Spain and go out to Valencia and same thing, have some great wine on the terrace, chill at my house with a pool and overlook the Mediterranean Sea, eat paella. And that just, I don't know what it is, but that just sounds amazing to me. And when I've looked at the international world, the dollar is the strongest currency out there for the most part. I mean, the pound is stronger, but for the most part, we're one of the strongest. And there's no reason you can't use the power of a dollar to arbitrage that, to pick up cheap property that's going to cash flow in other countries that allow it, Mexico being one of those. And so I have this idea, but it's the same freaking problem. It's so hard to research and find answers on the properties, to find them. A lot are scams. It's very tough. You almost have to connect and meet people, meet these realtors who can find them and figure them out. I have found multifamily properties like 150,000 for 10 units in Mexico. But it scares me. It's going to scare the regular person. If I can crack this code of specific international locations where people can use their American dollars to invest and make money safely, securely in a way that doesn't scare them, the world will just open wide up for people who can't afford in the States or want to move, retire. Who knows what will come from it, but it's a dream of mine. It's one of the reasons I started to go international out of the gate. So that's what I mean when I say you don't know what's going to come from when you put yourself in that position. The lady, the realtor, Karina, was like, hey, when you come down, let's get together. I'll find you an awesome place to stay. She'll introduce me to people. Like, who knows what that can lead to? So I think that's just an awesome part of just chasing your passion and chasing your goals.
Yeah, very well said. You know, getting back to Mexico specifically, you know, a lot of the news on the that people come across every day is just people from Mexico coming across the border. There's a less known story, which is that just as many people from America are going to Mexico to retire because they can afford, like, the dollar is going to buy you a better quality of life. You're going to be closer to the beach. The weather is going to be better. The food is less expensive. Healthcare, dental care is less expensive. So a lot of people are moving to Mexico from the United States to retire. And so I think there's a tremendous opportunity in Mexico over the next 10 or 20 years to provide, whether you buy an investment property to rent to other Americans who are there on vacation, or other Americans who are there longer term just because they want to spend 6 months of the year there, or they want to retire there long term. I agree with you. I think the opportunity is great. It's absolutely fantastic. So good on you. And you're right. It all begins with relationships, because when you're trying to invest in a different country, it adds one more layer of risk, whether that's exchange risk, or whether it's completely different laws, or can you sue somebody if somebody tries to steal from you? Like, well, like what kind of legal recourse you have if you do run into a situation that you're unfamiliar with. I think in America, I've lived in different countries. I've been an expat in other countries, and I can tell you, a lot of people in America take rule of law for granted, right? The idea is that in America, we have very strong laws and we have lawyers. And at the end of the day, you can't really, well, for the most part, for most of us anyway, we're not billionaires, but like, we can't really bend the law to our will. Like, the law is what the law is, and let the lawyers fight it out. And eventually, whatever the ruling, that's how the law is going to go. A lot of other countries don't work that way. I spent many years in China as an expat. I can tell you that once you live in a country like China, you come back to America, you're like, wow, man, this rule of law thing is really good. Like, it's really there to protect everyone. And so, yeah, you have these risks when you invest overseas, but like you said, you build strong relationships, do your research, understand it, and the world's your oyster, man. Yeah.
No, I agree. And that the Riviera Maya area is absolutely booming. I keep telling myself, what will this look like 10 to 20 years from now? And there's hot, there's hot areas all over the world right now. It's funny. You've been in China, Lisbon in Portugal's hot, Spain, Greece is really trying to pull in people with their digital nomad visa. There's like 20 some countries with digital nomad visas now. Bali, oh my gosh, Bali properties are so inexpensive for what you get. They're amazing. Yeah. Ghana's blowing up. Like, it's all over where these people, like you said, Americans are moving there. Panama. And so it's super exciting. It is scary for a lot of people. I am curious. You said, where else have you lived overseas?
Oh my God. Yeah. So I was born in Eastern Europe. I was born in Hungary. So I lived there till I was 10. I grew up in Canada. And then in my late 30s, I moved to the United States. And then I went over I worked in China for 4 years, working for a Canadian company prior to moving to America. So I'm somewhat familiar, I guess you could say. I have hands-on experience with about 4 different countries.
How many languages can you speak?
Not as many as I should. Really, like, just speak really well, just English and Hungarian. That's it. I did speak Chinese fairly well. I moved away from China in 2015. And when I was there in China, like, I used to take Chinese lessons twice a week. I had a Chinese tutor, blah, 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 and I practiced quite a bit. And I was like somewhat conversational. Like, I could talk to taxi drivers and I could like listen to the radio and make out, about half of what was being said, kind of thing. But I've let it go. Like, I'm 8 years out of China now, and I just don't get the practice anymore. And it's not where it should be. And growing up in Canada, I had the opportunity to learn French, and I just didn't take advantage of it. I didn't live in a French-speaking area. The area where I lived in was really English only. And so a lot of people ask me, "Oh, you're from Canada. Oh, it's good. So you speak French, right?" And I was kind of I get embarrassed, and I say, you know what? No, I should speak French in all honesty, but I never learned. That's a regret of mine, a personal regret. As an adult now, I wish, man, if I could talk to my 12-year-old self, I'd be like, you know what? You have this opportunity to learn a language, like take advantage of it. But
yeah, I want to learn Spanish. I just want to start there.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely. So Zach, you have this amazing goal that you want to make 8 million people happy. I love it. Tell me, like, what does that mean? What is your definition of happy, and what does a goal mean to you?
So the 8 million thing, it seems random, kind of arbitrary, but it's not. My goal is to directly impact 8 million. And that comes from thinking about how many people are walking the planet. We're at like 7.8 billion. So we'll be at 8 billion in no time. So just 1% of that. So you're 8 million. That's all I would love to directly impact. And that's not making a TikTok video or an Instagram reel that goes viral and it gets 8 million views. It's offering housing or writing a book that impacts in the people that read it. I'm working on a real estate board game that should be coming out soon. And I would people buy that to learn about real estate, to speak with me one-on-one coaching, or in some aspect that I'm able to touch them directly to help them public speaking, whatever that looks like. That's what I would like to do. So that's what's driving me right now, is to use my modes of communication to help people. I think that anybody who is in a situation where they have a skill set or some type of knowledge that they feel they can share that can impact the world and help others. You don't have to be famous. You don't have to be rich. You just have to be a step above the people below you. And then that's how you can help and give back. And so I feel like I'm at a point now where it's time. It's time to start giving back. And the more value you can give and the more people you can impact, I do think that money comes with that. And so as you move up, that's just more people you can help and impact and bring with you.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's amazing, man. I wish you all the best on that journey. That sounds amazing. And Zach, I'm blown away by how much or how productive you are, right? I mean, you got this website that you're building, right? Then you got this board game you're working on. You got a full-time job as a loan officer. You're probably doing all kinds of other things, like taking the time to speak with me today. But what are some productivity tips that you could offer somebody who's listening?
Well, let's not forget I have 2 little girls under 20 months as well.
Wow. Okay. You really have your hands full.
Man,
wow.
Let me tell you, I always think that I'm not as productive as I would want to be, but you're right. There's a lot of cookie jars that my hands are in. One of the things that I do is I use a planner. So it's called the Next Level Planner. It's like $29, but it'll last you 6 months. It's absolutely amazing. I ended up buying it because I was in this group called Commit Action. It's like $299 a month, but it's a group that you join for being held accountable. Like literally, that's what someone does. At the beginning of the week, they lay out, okay, well, before the beginning of the week, they work backwards from your goals. So 5 years, 3 years, 1 year. So from the 1 year goals, it works back 6 months, 3 months, and then 1 month. And it says, okay, well, what do you need to do this week that's going to be the biggest impact to help get you to your 1 month goal? And so you will meet with an accountability partner at the beginning of that week to mark out what you're going to do that week. And they will text you like, hey, did you get this done? And it's so funny how it works, because when the next week comes and you didn't do what you were supposed to do, you feel bad. You're like, oh no, I've got to talk with my partner. I better get this done. So you get it done really quickly. And so you have your meeting and they're like, did you do your thing? And you go, yeah, I got my stuff done for last week. All right, let's do the next week. It is well worth the money. It oddly is amazing. And so I highly recommend it. It was a little rich for me at the time. And so I feel like I'm pretty good at self-regulating. It didn't give me what I needed. I didn't need accountability. I needed someone to help me in business for the things I didn't know I needed, if that makes sense. I needed more of a business coach than I did accountability. So I got out of it and got the Next Level Planner. Same thing. There's a habit tracker. You write down every single day what you need to do by the time, your gratitude stuff. It's got little check marks. Did you exercise? Did you get your nutrition? All types of things to keep you on track. And I do all those too. I meditate. I get my water. I exercise today. So somehow in that, I've gotten just into this mode of just trying to be productive. My wife does help me. I wake up at 7. But I think very clear goals is what does the trick. Writing down what you need to do, staying focused, clear goals, making sure you stay healthy, and knowing where you're heading. Doing those things has really kept me on target. I have an extremely bad habit of adding new things to do. Like the micro apartments. I'm like, oh, I need to just spend a little bit of time and go do a deal. No. I've made it a mission to stop doing that, to build on what I'm already doing. That's my kryptonite. And that's why I have these things, is because of adding stuff. But yeah, just staying on using the planner and following this passion that's really kept me on target.
You mentioned this planner. I think you called it the 6-month planner, and it's something like $29. Is it an actual notebook, or what is it?
Yeah, so it's Next Level Daily. It's on Amazon, and it will last you 6 months. But before you dig into the planner, so it immediately will ask you, what's your personal mission statement? Who are your mentors, your masterminds, your role models? Then it makes you rank your life balance, like 1 to 10. Rank everything from your body, your mind, your connections, growth, financial contributions, lifestyle. So it helps you to pinpoint where you could do better, and you actually have to mark down the areas you need to improve. And then you do the same thing that Commit Action did. You write out your 5-year, 1-year goals, and then you work back to 3 months. So I've got all my goals listed out for each month that I need to hit. I actually need to update these, but I go through and I knock them out. I start check marking things off that I need to go after. So I use that as a benchmark to say, okay, well, what do I need to do today in this week in order to get to where I need to go? So it really helps you to stay on target.
Zach, as we move to wrap up the call, I usually ask guests, what books they recommend, but you're a step ahead of me. On your website, you have a list of about 50 books, and these are the 50 favorite books, that most influential books that you've read. You even have like a photo of each book cover. It's really easy to go through it. And I love the fact that there's different kinds of books in there, right? Like some books are about business and business strategy, like stuff that you would find in an MBA course. I'm an MBA grad myself, so I recognize some of the books that I read when I took my MBA, like Good to Great, Blue Ocean Strategy, 0 to 1, etc. And then you have a bunch of really good books on investing, like Secrets of the Millionaire Mind and stuff like that, which really helps people just understand finances and how to create wealth and how to have that millionaire / wealth building mindset. So thanks very much for putting that list. I'm going to put all these links that you mentioned today in the show notes. I'm going to go through it, everything from how to find those real estate deals to like the 6-month planner to the home buyer league, all this stuff on there. I'm going to collect all the links, put them in the show notes. There's a ton of good actionable insights that you provided today. And thank you very much for your time, Zach. Any last words?
I just want to thank you. It's great that there are people like you who allow people who, don't get the exposure that they should, who are doing amazing things and trying to do amazing things. I'm a firm believer that people who are trying are just as important, because every single person has value. I think you can learn something from anyone. That's why we all need to treat everyone with respect, no matter where you're at, no matter what country you're from. So I appreciate you and, taking that leap of faith in your own entrepreneurial journey to bring someone like me on and others that you are also speaking with. So thank you for the time, and thank you for letting me get my voice out into the sphere of the world that we live in. And hopefully that this talk will help at least one person. That's what I tell a bunch of people when they say, how do you know if it was a success? My answer is always, was there one person there? That's all you need. So keep doing what you're doing. I'm going to do the same. And in 7 years, we'll see where we end up. If we have hit the average of how long it takes to make something great.
Sounds good. If you're up for it, Zach, then in 7 years, we'll do another episode, and we'll see what happened to us and where we ended up.
Absolutely. So 2030, game time.
Ooh, yeah. Sounds scary when you say that, but yeah, you're right. Yeah. Next decade is 7 years away. All right, man. Thank you very much for your time, Zach. Have a wonderful evening.
You too, Gabe. I appreciate it.